We are live from Salina. I never thought this day would ever come. Hello there, I'm James Lowe. You also might know me as Jiggy Jaguar. And we have an eclectic group of folks with us this evening to talk media, new, modern, and what's coming next. And I want to start, first of all, we have a Skype call today. Mr. Ross Long is with us. He has got a radio background, television background. He's done a few documentaries, and he was also often referred to as the rabble-rousing ringleader when me and him did a Sunday radio program here in Salina, Kansas. And Ross, how are you, my friend?
I can hear you great there, Jiggy. This is Ross Long, your Beatnik Ross, sometimes they call me out here in Colorado, having a blast, and couldn't be happier to be here tonight. Thank you for having me.
We also have with us next to me Mr. Todd Pittenger. How are you, sir?
Doing good. You said you're going to talk about old media. That's me.
One thing I like about Todd is he's hyper-local. You believe in the traditional, we need local news, local sports, local.
I do.
And KSAL News, you also host some programming here on Access TV.
A little bit, yeah.
And as Ross and I were talking the other day, you're a newsman that doesn't get your news off a scanner.
Correct. Well, I get tips. I get leads off of the scanner. Then I go out and I get the story.
There you go.
That's me.
That's you. Well, thank you for being here.
And thank you for inviting me.
And Andy Hoosier sitting next to Toad, as Ross has called you on a few occasions. I don't know why.
Ross and I go back a year. He used to cut commercials for me back in the early 90s.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, 25 years, probably.
That's right.
Now, Andy, of course, Steckline Communications out of Wichita, Kansas.
Yes, sir.
And, sir, who walked in behind me?
Well.
You host a program called The Voice of Reason.
That I do.
Tell us a little bit on your...
Political talk, live and local. It's local politics, city, county, statewide, and national. We cover the whole broad spectrum and put the nice reason of the millennial generation and what it means for us to take the news stand and for us to inherit the issues that we're seeing today.
Fantastic.
fun
And right
time.
across from Andy is one of my mentors, Mr. Paul Green. Kansas
Former radio guy?
Yes, former radio guy, Kansas Wesleyan University. Ross told me the other day that you were Google before there was a Google.
That's nice of Ross.
The man covered the Unabomber trial in California for CNN.
Yeah,
True
I
story.
was a correspondent for CNN in Sacramento, California when the Unabomber trial was going on.
Holy smokes.
That was pretty much when I decided to quit. I'd had enough of it by then.
And now you're going for the Unabomber look, right?
Yeah, I am. Come out to my cabin sometime.
That's right.
Just don't open your mail.
Right.
You folks blame me for being a hippie.
Now, I want to start first off with a little bit of radio versus online versus satellite. I want to start with Andy. Give me your perception of radio and online radio and satellite radio.
Well, obviously we're seeing radio go more towards the internet, which I think it needs to, especially if we're going to keep the young demographic, or else it's going to die out. Right. We've seen a huge decline when it comes to AM radio especially, which is my favorite, but I feel the urgency that we need it, the live and local news, whether it's national, syndicated, or live and local locally. But, I mean, the on-the-minute news reports, as you mentioned, right. I mean, it's essential, so we need to keep it alive, and I think internet's eventually is going to be where it's going to go. TV-wise, it's there. I mean, it's doing its thing, and I haven't been too experienced in that side of it. But FM, I really don't see FM being here for very long. I really don't. I mean, when you listen to top 40s, when you listen to country, when you listen to rock, the same 40 songs rotating all day long is going to get old. You have iPods, you have internet radio with no commercials. So, I mean, the AM talk radio is going to be the new beast of radio again, but it's going to take a new form of online internet radio.
And I think they complement each other.
They really do.
Initially, I think AM was a little bit scared to embrace the online broadcasting, but I think they complement each other now. I think we've realized that online is a tool, and like you said, online we reach out to more listeners. We get emails all the time. Soldiers stationed in Afghanistan, Iraq,
exactly.
They'll shoot us an email, say, you know what, I got online just to listen. I wanted to get a little feel of my hometown. I wanted to feel like I was home for a little while.
Exactly.
So I really think they complement each other. And I would say there's going to come a day where we have more online listeners than we do over-the-air listeners on the radio.
I think we're really seeing that already. I really think we do with the live streaming, with the podcasts of individual shows like The Voice of Reason, like all the local talk shows.
Yeah.
You know, the podcasting. Oh, like, okay, I didn't get to catch it today, but I got the app on my phone at The Voice of Reason. Got to click on it and hear the podcast. I mean, we're already moving in that direction, and if we're going to keep it alive, that's the way it needs to go.
Right.
Now, Paul, you can speak to the fact that you helped set up an online stream for Kansas Wesleyan. Talk about the headaches and some of the shenanigans that you had to go through.
Okay, well, first of all, there were virtually no headaches at all. It was literally just a technical challenge to set it up.
So you don't have all the FCC rules and all of that we have on the radio?
Absolutely none. As a matter of fact, we looked at pursuing an LPFM, low power FM license, a little while ago, and we decided not to do it. It would have been probably about $500,000 just in seed money right off the start.
Right.
I set up our online radio station for under $2,000. And literally I used old equipment to do it. I had stuff left over.
Yep.
I was sitting down one day looking at this stuff, and I'm like, I'm just going to build an online radio station. Some people build boats and glasses. I do stuff like that. And I did. Literally, we were in a closet for the first couple of years of our existence, supply closet. Half of that was because I didn't want anybody to find out what I was doing, because they might tell me, no, stop. But I got done first. The biggest headache we have right now is one that terrestrial radio stations don't face, and that is the strict limitations placed upon us about how we carry copyrighted material.
Right.
How many songs we can play, what kind of songs we can play, how many can come off the same compilation or album, how many by the same artist in a 2-hour period of time.
Well, how we get around that, we have to pay licensing fees.
Don't think we don't.
Oh, really?
We have to pay licensing fees for that too. We can ask for a non-reporting waiver, but that's going to cost us $500 a year. So we have to log everything.
Yep.
Now the surprising thing that made this such a big payoff is that you all only think you have a rough idea of how many people may be listening at any one certain time.
Yep.
Except for our online.
I know exactly.
Yeah,
I know
our
You
online-
have the metrics.
I know
Correct.
what kind of computer they're using, what kind of
Yep.
operating system, whether it's a mobile device, whether it's a desktop.
Which for years has been the crux of AM radio, or FM radio for that, the way they do ratings, the way it's Nielsen now. Back in the day it used to be Birch, it used to be Arbitron.
Yep.
They don't take a fair sampling size. I mean,
No, they don't.
a handful of people can really make a station have a huge book or a tiny book.
And I've known people in the business who would pay good money to get a hold of an Arbitron diary.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know people like that too. And so,
There's folks that have done that. They've gotten in trouble for that.
there are lots of toes on the scales out there when it comes to doing that kind of stuff. But really, it's the licensing issue is the only thing that stands in the way of every Tom, Dick, and Harry being able to flip a switch
Yeah.
and start broadcasting themselves from their own home. Outside of that, there's literally no scientific or technical know-how involved.
Now, Ross, what do you think about all this? Because you and I were doing online radio and video and all that, and we had a heck of an audience. We talked to everybody from entertainment personalities to dwarves.
Yes, and I like how Paul said he kind of did his on the cheap. Boy, you and I certainly did with old computers,
Yes.
an old control board, cameras, and kind of jury rigging live stream like it never really should have been, was intended for.
Yep.
We managed to have a 2-camera show that now it seems that live stream and some of the other streaming services are embracing for radio type broadcasts, because we had things to show people also. So I just felt it kind of enhanced the radio experience, the online radio experience. When people were already listening on their devices, well, now they could see it on their devices.
Yeah.
Is it even radio then?
Well, yeah, then it turns into TV.
Well, and really,
See, that's the
is
thing.
internet even radio? Because by definition, radio is radio waves that go through the air, right?
Exactly. That's a legal definition of broadcasting. You have to use radio waves.
And in the strictest of sense, you know, Jiggy actually had radio stations that aired his stuff, you know, just the audio portion that way.
Yeah.
So yes, but it originated as Jiggy's original radio show that he's been doing since the 90s.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to too much get away from that radio, but we sure had a heck of a lot of fun with you know, bringing TV into it, and it was kind of the early years of doing that. It seemed like.
Now, something that I want to get everybody's thoughts on is now we're moving into this broadcasting stuff from our phones. We're doing Facebook, we're doing Periscope, we're doing all that.
Facebook video?
Facebook video. My fiance actually built a stick that we have the ability to do Periscope, Ustream, Facebook, YouTube, all from one
I've seen
deal.
that monster.
Yeah.
That's like,
And
wow.
I told you, you need to take that to Shark Tank and try to sell that to them.
Now, Ross brought up earlier today when we were game planning for the show tonight, some of the different things that have happened. In fact, what was it? There was a case just yesterday where police shot a guy.
Oh, yeah.
And the woman whipped out her phone, and the first thing she thought of is put it on Facebook and go live.
Yes, I would like to say, and Paul, I'm just chomping at the bit to get your take, especially on this, and everybody's take, but especially yours, Paul, because you were right on things when the Vester Flanagan thing happened a few months ago. And this is kind of the dark side of social media that way, and live broadcasting, when we all have these devices and we can go live, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, 100,000 viewers. So I'm just kind of interested on your take on all that, and where this whole thing is going or might go.
Here's the problem.
Yes.
And the problem exists in radio and television as well as on the internet to some degree, and that's a problem of context. I can make it look like a cop just shot my best friend for no reason whatsoever, when in fact the best friend was throwing a rabid pit bull with a suicide vest on at the cop and got shot. If I never show that, nobody ever knows what actually happened. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the danger, is you're getting only one perspective. And this is the real problem I have. And some people are going to take offense at this. What led us all to this, and what led us primarily, I think, to the death of the medium, and it isn't dead yet, it's dying, and you can't avoid that conclusion, was the two things. Ronald Reagan pulling the teeth of the FCC in the Federal Telecommunications Act that Clinton passed in '96, which completely removed regulation from the marketplace whatsoever, and almost completely eliminated public trust in the media. It became a suicidal game of Russian roulette as to what talk personality would go just far enough to completely remove the public's trust utterly in all of us. And right now, you've got so many fractured different camps. You can't just say you're conservative anymore. That used to be a thing.
That's true.
But it doesn't.
Are you a Tea Party conservative, or are you just a conservative?
Exactly.
Or are you,
Because, you know, you might be a rhino if you're not the right kind of conservative. You know what I'm talking
I make
about.
fun of them quite a bit.
But it's on the same side, it's a liberal thing as well. You know,
Yep.
people automatically make the assumption I'm a Democrat, and I'm not. And, you know, we can't trust anything, even though we're seeing it. And that's really bothersome to me. What I think has the possibility, and what nobody seems to be thinking about right now, and they'll get around to it eventually, they have to, or else they deserve to die.
They deserve to die.
Newspapers. Newspapers already have a tremendous bank of public trust, believe it or not.
Absolutely.
More so than any broadcast outlet.
You know,
out
it's
there.
funny you bring up newspapers. I actually invited Gary DeMuth from the Journal to be on the panel today. And he's like, I'm not interested.
Well, and that's the problem. But what I think
So-
we're seeing is this is also a generational thing.
Yep.
Radio still has an audience, and people often point that out to me, and like I'm an idiot. I'm not. Yes, you've got an audience. But let's take a look at the demographic breakdown of that audience. They're getting older every day.
Yes.
Literally, your lifeblood is dying one old person at a time, and there's nothing to do to stop that. Television is going to, or not television, but newspapers need to realize right off the bat that they can hop on the bandwagon and pretty much eliminate the competition
Yep.
with that trust and faith that they've already established in the public. Now, that's not 100% true, because everybody always thinks that the Salina Journal is such an incredibly liberal rag, which makes my eye twitch. But everybody always has that sort of viewpoint about an established media business. But they've really got the ability to provide context to a story, if they haven't already hemorrhaged too many of their reporters.
Well, and something that you guys do at KSAL, which I just love to death, is the fact you have your newscasts and you have the website,
Right.
the news website.
And it's like an evolving circle, the circle of life. They each support one another. It helps my newscast. Paul knows newscast, brevity, brevity, brevity. We send people to the web. And that's the advantage really that radio has about this. You've got your web show, you've got your web radio station, Paul. You really don't have an avenue to advertise it, whereas the radio, the audience that we have, we can push it to that.
And the fact that, and this is an inescapable truth, and this isn't a criticism of your work at all, but broadcasting people can't write copy to save their lives.
You're absolutely right. The first thing I do, I'll go sit down and say, remember, I write for radio, so I don't. If your name is spelled wrong here initially, it doesn't matter. I'm pronouncing it. I'm not writing.
And people don't understand that it takes a completely different mindset to write a piece of copy for the radio than it does to write a standard, reverse pyramid, correct AP manual style piece of copy.
One of the most
for a newspaper.
difficult things I do, Paul, for instance, I went out to a fatality crash this morning, did a special report on the radio, wrote a story for a newscast on the radio, then wrote a story to go online on the internet. Two totally different stories. And when I first started doing this, I struggled doing that.
Yeah, and so you got television and radio guys who can't write newspaper copy to save their
Absolutely.
lives. But on this, just like flipping a coin, the newspaper people are horrible on television. They're the most stiff, wooden, unnatural,
That's why Gary
unlikable
turned it
people.
down and wasn't here tonight.
No, Gary's a good
Gary's
guy.
not stiff, he's an actor.
But that's true as well, and they shun that.
Yes.
Because the dream of a journalist for many years was, I'm the guy that works behind the scenes, and I type my copy and that's it.
I
don't-
write the story. The story's
Yes.
not about me.
Yeah.
And in many ways, our line of work is personality-driven and very ego-driven. It has to be, or else you're not good, you're not charismatic. But the problem is with that, and this brings us into another avenue, and I think Ross is finally I'm getting around to your point, Ross. is
10 minutes later.
You know how much criticism stings. It hurts.
Yes.
We pretend like it doesn't, but it does. Now, the internet, my God, it's like the worst elementary school bathroom that's unsupervised, and you just give kids permanent markers.
The ability to leave anonymous comments does not bring out the best.
No, that is yeah. And I think it was Voltaire that once said, if you wish to see the true nature of a man, give him a mask.
Yeah.
Not
and
only
see how
comments,
that
but
goes.
blogs. I
Absolutely.
mean, now that we've broken
That
into
too.
blogs, because as you mentioned with personality, you can write anything on the internet, anything you want to, you can be anonymous and people can read it. And now we have such an information overload because of that we don't know what's true and what's not, which is really a lot of the problem with the younger generation searching for information, because everything on the internet contradicts itself and they don't know what's true and what's not.
And the level of technological ignorance among the general populace about how the magic box works is alarming. Because you mentioned anonymity. Nobody's ever really anonymous
Absolutely right.
unless they're following a certain series of steps that only a few
Yes.
people really know.
Big Brother can always find out.
And it's not even Big Brother. I've got high school kids
Right.
that can dox somebody, that
Yeah.
can just boop, oh, there's their identity, here's what
Yeah.
credit cards they have.
Here's where they live, here's a map, here's how to get to their house if you want to go.
You know, and we're all bought and sold like that. Literally, all the information. If you pay with a credit card or a debit card somewhere, trying to scrub your record from the internet
Yeah.
is Herculean.
Believe me,
task.
I've tried.
It's pretty tough.
That doesn't happen.
Does that answer your question, kind of, Ross? Is Ross even
What
here?
was the question that I asked?
About consequences, I think, is what you were getting
Yes,
at.
the consequences, sort of the dark side of what can happen on the internet. I hasten to add, since you are talking about newspapers, it seems they have not been the best at crossing over into like the internet. It
They're
seems about
idiots.
the only paper
Yeah.
that can make any money on its online edition would be the New York Times. But you're right, there's problems. Newspaper people kind of come off pretty stiff on the on the TV and likewise. And so I don't know if there's a lot of crossover possibility there. Will that mean newspapers will die? Perhaps that's a question. I don't know.
I think newspapers probably will die as a print medium, and I don't think they'll completely disappear, but I think they're going to be, you know,
As the
fairly
older
unusual.
generation
Yeah.
dies off,
Yeah.
I think the younger generation, my son, he gets all of his newspaper, Salina Journal, he gets it online.
Exactly.
Whereas my mother, nothing can replace to her a picture of the grandkids in the paper. She cuts that out, puts it on the refrigerator. To her, printing it off the printer from the online version just isn't the same. She wants to cut that out, put it on the refrigerator.
And some people think it's not actually legitimate unless, you know,
Right.
it ends up in print.
Could,
what about
could
the
we see the day that the Wichita Eagle just disappears?
We're getting there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it already sold out. And I mean, yeah, you could definitely see that. Now, you can also see them starting like the Twitter accounts for the Huffington Post or the New York Times. And instead of actually reading the article, you see the one word, the one, you know, however characters that is, you know, about the story. And that's about the extent that they read to it and say, oh, okay, now I know what's going on in the world, because now it's not the entire article, but a one-line little character content about what the story is.
And you've got a link shortener to maybe, and that's the thing is there are a couple of news organizations that are hyperlinking like they should, but embedding those hyperlinks and being able to curate that information, send people back to earlier, more relevant pieces of news that might pique their interest is absolutely critical. But I think one of the things you need to address is the thing that always makes people say, oh, you communist, is that where newspapers had their strength is that they actually controlled the means of production.
Yep.
They literally controlled the presses. So if you think about it in a modern corollary, in the days before the internet, newspapers were the internet. Papers were the internet. That was
Yep.
how all the information and entertainment news got out to the world. And the newspapers owned that. Well, they didn't realize soon enough that that ship had sailed as soon as the first little dial-up AOL account ever got created. And they consistently thought this was a fad.
Yeah.
You know who else thought things were a fad? Old AM sales guys who refused to sell FM advertising because AM or FM radio was a fad. And
I was told by a program director at a radio station in Hutchinson, without giving away too much of my
Well, that
clue.
narrows
That narrows it down.
two groups left, right?
We had a website business that was next door to us, and they offered they were going to build them a website, and they just wanted to trade. And the owner said, this website stuff, that stuff's going to be gone in 5 years. I don't need a website. And this was in the year 2000.
And there were people like that that were talking to me in the business that were actually fairly intelligent people that I still hold in some regard and esteem. But man, you were so wrong. How you couldn't have been more wrong, and about something so critical that it's going to mean the end of your industry.
Yeah.
If you make it to retirement age, you're not going to be able to look back at the world and see the same place.
Yeah.
It's going to be unrecognizable, I think.
Now, the next thing that I want to bring up is we've all got our radio experience, but we've also got TV experience sitting here. What do you guys make of Netflix and Hulu? And because like I remember reading years ago your setup you put on Facebook
Right.
where you said
You cut the cord. You cut the
yeah,
cable.
And you explained everything how you set it up. And then people like my buddy Tom Hatfield went a little further with setting up an internet bridge basically between his house and his parents' house to get their Cox channels, different things. Had kind of go into
It's the
to
greatest.
that whole thing.
It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when you look at bandwidth, bandwidth is not a non-renewable resource. Bandwidth is an infinitely renewable resource. You can have gigabits of bandwidth. You can have bandwidth until the freaking sun burns out. You're not going to run out of trees or paper or ink with bandwidth. So anything the cable company tells you about, oh, there's not enough bandwidth, is a lie. It's a lie. And if they say, oh, we have to throttle you because we don't have enough bandwidth, no, you don't. You have the capacity to expand that almost limitlessly. And for pennies on the dollar of what you would like people to actually believe it's going to cost.
So with that in mind, Todd, I guess when Comcast and everybody was saying we need to have the internet fast lane, that was all just nonsense.
I guess.
That was such a shameless ploy by cable companies specifically to screw over every single consumer in this country. The belief that net neutrality is somehow anti-business is ludicrous. What net neutrality is anti-monopoly, and that's actually pro-business. And so people harp about, oh, net neutrality is the government interfering and regulating. Well, yeah, the government also says you can't put rat poison in my Coke. That's a good thing. All right, so not all government regulation is a bad thing. We get on this train and we think that, oh, the government's real horrible. Well, yeah, except for the fire guys who put out my house and the cops who don't shoot me but actually, stop other crimes from happening, and all of the roads that I drive on. And we get on this huge kick about, all my tax money is being wasted. And it's a smokescreen to really distract us from the important earth-shattering stuff that's happening that nobody wants you to see and nobody wants you to talk about.
Now, Andy, I've heard your show. You rail like crazy against all the different things that Paul was talking about.
Well, to an extent. I mean, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I am one of those that likes extremely limited regulations, because if they put rat poison in your Coke, nobody's going to buy the Coke and the business is going to go down, which is, the benefits of a free market society. So, that's kind of where I take it. But you're right. I mean, there are some guidelines that need to be led in order to to kind of narrow the lines a little bit here.
Yeah.
As for the Netflix and for the online streaming and stuff, I guess I'm one of those old school guys that's been having trouble going to that side and the Hulu and the Netflix, because I like getting the DVD, seeing the TV, getting that kind of stuff. And I've never been, I guess I'm traditional. I'm a young generation millennial on AM radio, for crying out loud. And I'm having a hard time going to that myself, but I do see the benefits in it for sure.
Now, Ross, what do you think about all this?
I think we're having one heck of a good conversation so far. My whole take on this is that what we had so many years ago, what we jury-rigged to get together to make something working up in your apartment or wherever it may have been, we now have in our cell phones. I mean, people are going around and like today, I am having no problems doing this Skype call. I hear every word you all are saying. I guess you all are seeing me and hearing me all right. And this is great. I mean, this would not have been doable 15 years ago, Paul, when we first did Psychic Live. Do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. And
that was the very early years, and Access was great because it was one of the first access centers to have a streaming server, which was a big thing in 2001 and 2002. But we even got calls, well, maybe not calls, but at least viewership from Australia at like 6:30 in the morning, their morning. So
Explain the concept of Psychic Live.
okay, that was a live show that we did right there on Access, in the Access studio where you all are right now. And we'd have live call-ins, and basically people would get a 2-minute free psychic reading from a psychic that we had come up from Wichita. And
Wow.
It was just incredibly successful, and it lasted for 7 years, and we just had viewers and people that would write us and people that would watch us online and call in, and it was just, Paul, I'm not going to aggrandize myself anymore. I'll let you do it.
Oh no! I'm seriously. It was one of the most successful and long-lived programs that ever was produced here at Community Access.
Wow.
And Ross was able to really tap in to a vein of interest in the community about that particular kind of material. Now, whether or not you believe in psychic mediums,
Well, yeah.
and that's beside the point, there are lots of people that believe in that stuff. If you appeal to that audience that's out there, that demographic that exists, they're gonna be real good to you.
Yeah.
And they return that. We had a live studio audience. There were hardly ever empty chairs here in the studio. It was really an amazing show, and it was there were lots of fishing line used as well to hang stuff from.
Well, yeah, because
the
there was a few
rafters.
times that I would watch episodes, and it looked like nothing
Oh yeah,
you'd see on Access.
there was a lot of work that went into creating that program, and it paid off. I think in many ways that helped put Access Television back on the map at a time when people were wondering exactly what it was good for.
Yeah.
Because Access is a place where non-professionals make television.
Yes.
And when non-professionals make television, guess what? It's going to look non-professional. You expect that. But this was a show that was made by people that had some idea of how to put it together.
That's cool.
And it succeeded very well. And, you know, if you decided to do it again tomorrow, I think it would be just as successful as it was back then.
Now, there's one thing that I wanted, and I'll start with Todd on this.
All right.
People are getting a lot of their news from YouTube. They're watching whether it be the Young Turks or Alex Jones or David Pakman in any of these shows that are news shows. How did we get from tuning into the new news and hearing Dave 4 back in the day on KSAL to now just dialing up whoever we seem to find as the trusted news source on YouTube?
Well, I think it's because there are so many more offerings now. That was before the internet, and there's so many more offerings now. And I think anybody that has a cell phone now can be a reporter. I mean, I can be out on the interstate, and my son can be out on the interstate, see a wreck, take a photo of that wreck, throw it online, and he's become a reporter. Now, is he the trusted guy who's going to go and get the full story and talk to the authorities?
Yeah, because
or whoever?
like Paul was saying earlier with the phones, you don't know if they've thrown a bulldog.
Right.
What was it? A bulldog with a suicide vest?
Rabid bulldog.
Rabid. You didn't see that part, so you've only got part of the story.
correct.
Whereas with you and a lot of other reporters, you guys actually provide the actual concept of the news.
The frustrating thing to me about it is not that everybody wants to be a reporter. That's great. Go out, take a photo. It helps me go out, but the misinformation then that goes out there, and then the people that just believe anything that they see online. A lot of times there is so much information out there, and I spend as much time dealing with that misinformation and correcting things than I do actually writing a story.
And that's why you guys are so successful, because you're right. And what drives me nuts and what I talk about so much is the idea in society now with the young generation especially is because, I don't know if you saw it on Facebook, the video of the guy in Denver swinging a pipe around downtown, beating somebody. what's the first response? Pull out the phone and take a video of it, put it online. Instead of, I don't know, I'm in here right now, I can do something about it, and I can help somebody and stop him, but instead, no, it's about, oh, hey, I'm not living in the moment, I'm taking a video of it so everybody can see it and how many hits I can get and how many people are looking at me. When you're at a concert, people are paying hundreds of dollars for a concert ticket. What are they doing? They're on their phone videotaping it. They're not enjoying the moment.
Yes.
They're worried about what the social media and what the online is going to do for them. And you know, that's a problem. That's why this is going to come back to us as the radio, as the TV, as the true news reporting is going to come back, because that's what we need.
So how do you approach it from an educational perspective? Because you're molding, as Ross likes to say, you're molding young minds, Paul.
First and foremost, before I'm anything else, I'm a journalist. I don't write for a newspaper. I don't work for a radio station or a television station anymore. But I like to joke that being a journalist is like being an alcoholic. You never really stop. You're just in a constant state of recovery for the rest of your life. Once you write your first news story, you're pretty much doomed. I think the best thing we could possibly do is to teach as many people the precepts behind good journalism. And I think the cornerstone of that, the foundation of that, has to be objectivity and impartiality. And that's where almost everybody falls down, with very, very few exceptions.
Yeah.
Now, there are some folks out there that still do a good job, but a lot of people have a misconception, and I think it's largely been fueled by really hyper-conservative talk radio, that you have to be a real pit bull and attack somebody that you're interviewing, because you're not really asking questions. You're not really trying to find the answer. You're trying to make a point. And those are two very different things. And if we can make people understand that difference, then they're going to be able to recognize it when it's happening.
Yeah.
And so if you see somebody bulldogging somebody else, a source, you're going to start to ask yourself, what's this guy trying to do? He's trying to deliberately get an answer.
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever done an interview in their life knows that you can set that interview up and you can have that interview go however you want it to go.
Yep.
If you've done any interviewing at all, you absolutely can lead an interview to go in whatever direction you want.
One of the first things they taught me, Paul, you always hold the microphone. I hold
Absolutely.
the microphone. That way I control the interview.
That's right.
And I do that illustration of my students every year is I hold the microphone out and say, okay, well, you take the microphone from me, and I don't let go of it. Right. And then they do that weird where they're playing, and I'm like, what's the matter? Is it kind of, you just realize you're holding my hand? And they're like, yes, and you're creepy, and I'm like, but that's the thing is good journalists are in control of a story, and that used to be, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people, and I think Todd, it's true for you, that's a sacred public trust. We didn't get into this to be superstars. We got into this because we viewed it as some kind of public service.
To be fair and to tell the story.
Well, yeah, I went to the stupid school board meeting, not because I really loved the school board, because Marge at the beauty shop couldn't be there, and Joe from the gas station couldn't be there, and Bob, who worked at the plant, couldn't be there, and they needed somebody to tell them what was going on, and they needed somebody to tell them the unvarnished truth about what happened.
Well, you were at the Unabomber trials, a great example, huge national story, very small courtroom, not a lot of people can be there. You're literally telling the country what's happening in there in this open proceeding that we all need to know about.
Exactly, and oddly enough, what I thought was going to be the case that was going to be a landmark point in my career actually was, but for the wrong reasons entirely, because Kaczynski was a brilliant showman. Right. He just went, and the whole thing just evaporated, and I'm like, well, crap.
Now you do news analysis. You're not a bulldog conservative guy every day.
Well, I mean, well, it depends on the guest there. No, I mean, I don't do the news reporting. I do the news analysis. I read, as you mentioned before, the newspaper that was the source. I read that and I analyze it and I give my opinion on it. And you know, the AM talk radio and the conservative talk radio is what does that best, and that's why I enjoy it so much, because I couldn't do news reporting. I've tried and it's terrible. You know, I have to give my opinion on it or else I would burst. It's, you know, but I mean, you're right in the sense of leading an interview, whether you want it to go one direction or another. And I think it goes on both sides. I mean, MSNBC tosses up Barack Obama questions, nice little softballs all the time. I mean, it's whoever wants to direct it one way or another. For me personally, if I have a conservative on, I want to get a message across that, he's a solid conservative. Hey, you're wavering on this issue. I need to make sure you're firm on this, X, Y, and Z. Or if I'm interviewing a Democrat or a liberal, which I love to do as well, hey, this is my view on it. How, I want to try and understand where you're coming from this, and I love to have that discussion, and I really try and get deep into the weeds on what they really truly believe, and we can have a fulfilled interview and a fulfilled discussion.
And that's great. And the reason it's great is because you're not pretending to be the news.
Exactly. I openly
This
say
is my opinion.
Exactly.
This is what I think.
I openly say that I am not a news reporter. I am a commentator. I'm a political analysis. I'm an opinionated guy.
But I think somewhere, and this I think happened with Reagan, is when we decided to throw the fairness doctrine to the wolves, and we eliminated the idea that you had to present both sides of an issue equally as well, we just went straight to the dogs in this country. And in '96, when Clinton actually passed the Telecommunications Act, Bill Clinton, not a Republican, at least not in name, passed the Telecommunications Act. That pretty much essentially made radio completely into a business.
Radio as we knew it ceased to exist.
Because
local ownership was dead from that day forward.
And you needed to understand, and this is true as well, because I run into radio guys who think that we don't have any public obligation, we're a business. Well, no, it's a very foundational principle
Yes.
that you are stewards of that portion of the spectrum.
We use the public's airwaves to broadcast our
Yeah.
signal.
And that idea is reprehensible to some people who are actually on the management side in radio. They're like, we don't need to do that anymore.
Well, and that's why live and local is going to come back. The Clear Channels, the Cumulus, that is going to fall because it's going to come back to the small privately owned Steckline Communications and these small businesses that do focus on the live and local because of the syndication that doesn't make it have that personal flavor to it.
But I think what's going to stop them is they're not willing to pay for it. I don't think they're willing to pay for the staff.
That's true.
Because if you want, just in a town like Salina, which struggles all the time to break the 50,000 population mark, you cannot adequately cover everything newsworthy in this town with just 2 or 3 people.
At our zenith, at our height, we had a staff of 5,
Yeah.
4 in Salina, 1 in Abilene. We have stations in Manhattan, Abilene, and Salina. At our height, we had 5, and that was not enough to adequately cover everything. Today, we have 1.5.
And that's
Wow.
staggering to me. And I'll say this publicly, and I'm glad I get the chance to do that. You do an astounding job. Because I was part of the
Because
news team.
I would have never thought that there was that less of a crew over there.
It's sickening to me. But boy, I wonder what the commissions are still like, if they've gotten any smaller for the sales guys. Wonder what the salaries are like for the general managers over there. Because, times are tough.
I'm not privy to that.
We've had to scale
that
back.
information.
So you keep producing the stuff that we're selling, and we'll let you know when we have some money to buy you a new microphone.
Now Ross, being out there in Colorado, what do you see as far as news and radio? Because you're traveling all the time out there.
Well, our local news scene here in along the Front Range, where it's more southern Colorado, meaning Colorado Springs and Pueblo for the most part. The news beat is really good. I've always felt I don't know how to say this. Some outlets in Kansas just don't seem to want to ruffle any feathers. They want to do business. The better outlets like KSAL, they'll have staff, they'll go more in depth, they'll give us the story rather than just what the government wants us to hear. So that is
It's so easy to copy and paste a press release. And there's some that just do
you
that.
can be a rip and read journalist. That's the old school term for it. But then you're just a translator station, like too many radio stations have become. And I'm glad you've touched on this, Paul, because I don't like that at all. Because that's almost the death of radio. I mean, the news beat is in television, it seems, here in southern Colorado.
And yeah, it has. I think those television stations are really, if they can keep up with the hyper locality of their reporting, are going to do very, very well. They'll weather the storm, I think, a lot better than anybody else. Radio, I think, is, why am I going to listen to any one particular station if it can't really give me the kind and level of information that I need? Especially just imagine this. Imagine the newspaper actually did severe weather coverage and they pushed it out over their phone. And if I plug my iPhone into my car stereo, like just about every single car in the universe can do these days, I can drive literally from one part of the country to another, and as long as I either have a cell phone signal or Wi-Fi access, I can listen to whatever I want to.
Yeah.
And that was satellite radios. When I first took a trip in a car with a satellite radio system, I thought, my God, I've driven 1,500 miles and I haven't changed the radio station.
I was the same way. Same
That's
way.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's dead, unless you can give me some, because if I think.
And then they gave Howard all the money.
Well, if I think that some guys that were at local radio stations are a bunch of jackalopes and I don't like them, what chance do they have to get me as a listener?
Well, that's it.
They don't have anything anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to threaten me with. Like, what are we going to do? We're going to stop playing that old crusty rock and roll that we should have probably stopped playing 5 years ago. And I'm like, okay. Well, and we'll go back to the discussion of when I decided to cut the cable. Primarily, it came down to that. There is not a single radio station here in Salina that plays progressive rock, that plays really alternative music. There's a rock station, but it's not really a rock station, because I'll occasionally hear the weirdest pop stuff on that mixed with just the old crusty Alice Cooper, and I'm sorry.
Pulls out.
Sorry, folks. That's getting kind of agey, and it's not really rock anymore. So there's nothing there. There was nothing, literally nothing on the spectrum that held my attention. And I don't think that I'm the hippest cat in the world. I'm just kind of particular.
You're pretty hip, Paul.
But there was just nothing there. And I suddenly realized there never would be. There never would be. Because I'm not a member of that vastly, rapidly aging majority that's desperately clinging to their former glory of days gone by and reliving that through some, listening to Bruce Springsteen's on the radio. That gives them some comfort. I don't care about that. I want to hear something new and kind of cool and exciting and hip. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I get along so well as a college instructor is these kids keep me young.
Yeah.
Is that constantly they're bringing up something. Have you heard this? Did you watch this? And you wouldn't get that 20 years ago. When I was in college, what I teach today was science fiction.
Right.
Literally science fiction. I will never forget my first broadcast instructor brought us into the brand new television studio at Wichita State University and introduced the Chiron character generator. This $20,000 piece of equipment could store up to 2,000 photographs. Isn't that amazing? And I look at it, and this circles back to your point, is I can do more on my phone than I could with the $20,000 Chiron character generator and a $20,000 studio camera and everything else. I gave a talk at K-State Salina not too long ago, and I said basically the same thing. This is a radio station, a television station, and a newspaper all in one, if you know how to use it right.
When I first started at the radio station, to get a commercial on the radio from Salina to Abilene, literally every day, at the end of the day, I'd record them on a reel-to-reel tape. We'd meet halfway in Solomon, swap reel-to-reels, drive back to our respective stations, and dub them in. Now I put it in the computer, I click the button, what station I want it to go to, there it is. So literally, we would drive halfway.
You guys with the Mid-America Ag Network, you're all over.
Oh, we do. I mean, we got the Mid-America Ag Network all over Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas. I mean, but not only that, but with our radio stations in Garden City, we do the same thing. Okay, I produce a spot that goes over all of our stations. Bam, there it is. It's in Garden City. It's in Guyman, Oklahoma. It's up in, wherever it needs to be at, ag reports all over the mid part of the country.
And one of my first jobs working for Mid-America Ag News Network, I actually worked there in my youth, was they had
10 years ago?
Yeah. You're too kind. They had satellites, and one of our jobs was we cut all the commercials in Wichita, and you'd rack them up on a reel-to-reel machine, and then you'd say, okay, here's your commercial feed for, and boop, and you'd play all the spots, and everybody at the member stations would record them.
I was the guy on the other end recording those spots.
And occasionally you'd have to go up on the roof and
Wipe the snow out or adjust the satellite just a little
adjust
bit.
the satellite.
Yep.
And doing that in July on the hot tar roof, not a lot of fun.
Or in December when it's 10 below zero and ice storm, it's not that fun either.
Exactly. But so, having all of this technology readily available to us, a story that really impacts me personally is my mom is 92 years old, is now almost deaf as a post. Couldn't find hearing aids that actually really worked until she came across a brand that were accessible by her phone, by not an iPhone, not an Android device. She had an iPhone. So we bought her this iPhone, and for the first time in almost 10 years, I could call my mother and have a conversation with her on the phone. And she could set that up and set it in the middle of the table, and it will boost all of every sound that its microphone picks up and drive it straight to her hearing aids. Now, that's one very personal example of a piece of medical technology. But we can do the same thing here with this phone and literally have maybe 1,000 people listening to us saying whatever we want to talk about.
Yeah.
If we set it up right, we could do the Facebook Live.
Yeah.
So I think this is earth-shattering technology. I think it's game-changing. I mean, one of the things I like to talk about is a communication singularity. And the singularity is a concept of earth-shattering magnitude. When people talk about it, they talk about artificial intelligence. Well, I believe that in the mid-90s, we had a little micro-singularity occur. And that was when the internet got developed, because nobody realized that from that moment forward, the future was not guaranteed. If you would have asked me in 1993 what 2003 or 2013 or 2016 would have looked like, I would have told you in complete confidence, here's how it's going to look, here's what major networks are going to be there, here's how you're consuming your media. And then the internet happened, literally.
And it all changed.
And it all changed. And I think that kind of change is going to keep happening as more and newer technologies keep being developed.
Now, as far as
Paul, if I could jump in there.
yeah, go Ross.
I'd like to just mention that back in the 80s, they had the technology and they actually had Dick Tracy type, which wristwatch-sized TV screens. Well, nobody really wanted those. All they wanted from their TVs was bigger screens. However, today people are getting, that's gotten fuzzy now. People are not always getting their content off their TV screens. They're getting it off whatever they have, their tablets now, their phones, which are more powerful than I ever thought they would become. They're more like tricorders today for what they can do for us. But I like that our multi-use devices now are, we're almost taking them for granted, yet they're have become so important to our lives that way.
When you realize that you can watch TV while you poop, by holding this in the palm of your hand, the idea comes to you that suddenly something really fundamentally has changed about the planet.
Please keep that phone over on your side of the table.
But you know, I say that, and it's funny. People like roll their eyes. I'm probably not going to have a job by the end of this. But that's so true because Ross was right. People wanted bigger screens. They wanted more clarity. Well, suddenly now, when I watch Netflix on this, when I'm waiting for my kid to get done with a lesson or something, I'm in my car, and I'm watching an episode of Fringe, and I'm suddenly realize the video I'm watching on this screen is so crisp and clear, it's actually better than if I would have had one of those fancy projection screen televisions that everybody had back in the 1980s.
Yes.
Because it was still 480, you know, and I'm watching 1080 progressive.
But at the time, we thought it was great.
Well, yeah.
Well, we've almost run out of time here. I appreciate you guys being with us. Ross, thank you for making it possible to be on the old Skype-a-rooney tonight.
It's been one heck of an hour. I just realized it's been something close to 8 years since you and I have been live on that.
Yes.
And after this, it might be another one.
Exactly. It's been a long, strange journey, I'll have to say. As we wrap up here, let's go around the table. Andy, go ahead and give me your final thoughts on this evening and how people can catch the radio show and everything.
Well, as you guys mentioned, I mean, it's changing drastically, and we got to keep up with the times, or else we are going to be left behind. And you know, but I think we're on the right way to do it. I think that, like we mentioned, the live and local radio, the live and local television, the local flavor to everything is what's going to bring it back. The hard evidence, the hard news reporting, not just the guy, you know, videotaping a guy beating someone else on the side of the street with a pipe downtown.
Yes,
that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, my show's noon to 2 on KQAM down in Wichita, the Voice of Reason, and Voice of Reason, Podbean with the podcast and everything, and conservative talk radio. It's a fun time.
Todd?
I challenge everyone to have an open mind. I would challenge you, don't believe it. Just because you saw it on the internet does not make it to be true. I would challenge you to check out multiple sources, check out multiple different stories before you believe something. That's what I would challenge people to do.
And then you're on KSAL
I'm
all
on
the time.
KSAL. I do, I think, a dozen newscasts a day. We do newscasts 24/7. Paul knows how it is. The radio never closes. You know, 4th of July, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Christmas. We never close. We're always there. You know how it is too. 24/7.
All the time. All the time.
So we're updating the website 24/7 as well. So KSAL.com is the website. I can push you to the other radio station websites that way as well, or KSAL on the radio and online. And it's not there yet, but at some point our online listening will overtake, I believe, our on-air listening. And Paul makes a good point. The on-air listening, you never really know for sure how many people are listening. Our online listening, at any time I can go back there, back in the IT area, click a button, and I can see how many people are logged on and where they're at.
And Todd basically stole what I was going to say. But I'll take that even further. The old adage is don't believe everything you read, don't believe everything you see. Find out for yourselves and ask questions, because believe it, when the voice out of the box is telling you a thing, the voice out of a box is getting a paycheck to tell you that.
Yes.
And so you need to realize that and wake up and become literate about how you consume media. And I think being an adequately educated consumer of media is the most important thing that there is. And Todd's right, it never stops, it never ends, the news cycle never ends. And these days when it's raining or snowing or raining or thunderstorming or you get a tornado outside, Todd's out driving around in it, and I'll be sitting on my porch with a glass of scotch laughing. So I don't have to do that anymore.
One day I'll join you there,
Yes.
Paul.
Well, Ross, I appreciate you being with us. Thank you, sir.
I'll give you a few last words. rosslong.info. I'm kind of doing hippie stuff with some photography, some time lapses. Check it out. Yes, as journalists, we all know we're the biggest suckers of the truth. Always pursue it. Always be that cynic. Always pursue the truth. The truth will set you free, baby.
Well, thank you, Ross. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for having us on.
And maybe next month we might get everybody back together again and talk about cannabis and hemp. Who knows?
Hey, there we go.
Sing Kumbaya and have a group hug.
Yes.
Oh, I definitely will be unemployed if that ever happens.
Well, that's it. Thanks for watching live on Access TV. Appreciate it.